Coming up on Mount Hermeneutics, comic nerds rejoice. We're talking Superman, the Man of Steel. But Andre, what does that have to do with religion and Jesus? To find out, keep it right here. You're listening to Mount Hermeneutics, where three Marines give their perspective on God, faith, and spirituality with a heavy lean on the divine council worldview. This is not your grandma's Sunday school, nor is it always for the Christian faint of heart. Nothing about who we are or what we say make us experts. But you better believe we'll have a take, and perhaps it won't suck.
I agree with you, Matt, intellectually, that bottom line, it's God's prerogative.
That's a soundbite, by the way.
Right. It is God's prerogative.
No, I agree with you, Matt, intellectually.
Oh, shit. Color me impressed, Negro. Remember that Mount Hermeneutics is free and available on all podcast platforms, including this video you're watching right now called YouTube. So why don't you go ahead and do us a favor? Help us out. Subscribe, and leave a comment. And this one should be a little lighter and fun. We might even get angrier than we've been like when we talk about real subjects like Jesus, because Jesus is gonna get involved. I mean, whatever. It is what it is. If you're new to the show, I'm Andre. That's Matt. That's Brian. Fellas, what's happening?
Hi.
Guys, how we doing?
All right.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. We're two of us are color coordinated. One is not. One is in.
It's funny. You two match in color, but Dre and I match in
logo. Yeah.
We link it. So Matt filled it in. He linked it. He knew it. We
we didn't
we've
even
been friends so long that we knew what to do intuitively.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like seriously, none of us coordinated this.
Well, we coordinated to the extent that we knew it was a Superman episode.
That's true. And
that would be super weird if we didn't. If that part wasn't, then it'd be like,
Yeah.
I just give the open. You guys are like,
Superman. Well, it's funny you say that. for anybody that's not looking at us, Brian is wearing a somewhat traditional Superman colored logoed shirt. Andre's in a black and silver Superman shirt that looks like it has the globe on it, but casually it looks like camouflage, to be quite honest.
It is
camo. Okay, so it's an urban camouflage pattern, and I am wearing a silver and black Bo Jackson home jersey.
The Plato Negro, the Raiders.
And the reason for that is I don't have a Superman shirt, one. And in my mind, Bo Jackson is as close to real Superman as they come. So, this is my getting close, but not quite there.
What a nerd.
Doesn't have a Superman
doesn't
shirt.
have a Superman shirt. It's just got all this sports ball stuff. Gosh, what a dork you are.
Wow. That just happened.
Yeah, I'll take it. I'll take it.
Remember the 80s we used to beat that guy up? Remember that?
Right. how the turn has tabled.
Yes. Yeah. I actually kind of missed the days when comic books were a subculture, and
that's
now the normies have polluted it.
That's how I felt when Star Trek got re-released with Chris Pine and Zach Quinto. It like became cool with so I had to endure Trekkies of my parents for Mom. I know you're watching. You're big Trekkie, and I had to endure it. But I grew to like it, and then people would like make fun of Star Trek, and then it's one of those.
Then you got to get in fights with them because your mom likes it.
Or I would just mock them like a that's not even what Star Trek does. That's not even an element of Star Trek. You're an idiot.
Clearly, you don't know your way around the Enterprise.
Yeah, and then right after Chris Pine, it became cool and everyone liked it, and it was a big blockbuster summer hit, and because they did the whole reboot. I'm not spoiling anything. This movie came out like what, 2009? So they
I think enough time has passed.
Yeah, they rebooted it by using Prime Spock, and here we are. Like, they could just go way off canon, and I can't even argue because that is the new thing.
Yeah.
So, speaking of reboots, so how many times are they going to reboot Superman?
Until they get it right.
So yes, continually.
So for the listeners, we're going to do this in a non-spoilery way.
We're
That was
gonna
the
try. We're
that was
gonna
the
try.
agreement, because I have not yet seen it. I intend to watch it, the new Superman.
I don't know what you consider a spoiler though. Like, can
Well,
we talk about characterization without plot element,
I
without
think I
plot
think
terms?
that's the point. I mean, like if
I
you
mean,
want to
most of the
talk about
characters
the
are is the guys you know: Superman,
right,
Lois, Perry, uh, Jimmy, Lex Luthor, some sort of Tessmacher, but her name's Eve. Like the usual suspects: mom and dad, mom, pa, Kent,
right,
Otis was in there.
Otis. Yeah.
and
So
and Superdog is in this, right? So
Superdog.
so
Well,
let's not spoil all that. Like I'm
Right.
aware there's a dog and
if
Yes.
like
well, if you've seen any of the
the clips, right?
yeah, I'm actually, if you can believe it, I actually had Superman fatigue before I went to see the movie. On now I
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
and for everybody, for the listeners going, guys, why would you come and do a show and Matt hasn't seen it yet? I had a couple of problems. One, my wife is a massive Jurassic Park fan. That's her thing. And so I was obligated to take her to see Jurassic Park before uh, Austin and I go see Superman. And we were only able to see Jurassic last night. And I had to work today, so I couldn't go watch Superman today. So here we
Well,
are. I haven't seen it.
and I just got out 3 hours ago. So you, you know what? I predict, Matt, uh, that you will give this an all-in thumbs up.
It, so it's funny because as it stands with the previous Superman movies, I really enjoyed the Daniel Snyder Superman
Zack
movie, right?
Zack
Or
Zack,
Zack
Zack
Snyder.
Snyder.
Who the hell is Daniel Snyder? Oh, Washington Redskins owner. The
Yeah.
Zack Snyder version, I actually quite
What a
like.
dork with all your sports ball stuff. Gosh.
Not a superhero director.
Clearly, but I liked it. I liked Batman versus Superman or whatever the hell that one was called. And as we've talked about on this show, I like them because I come into this as a relative normie. I don't have a lot of DC comic book experience or exposure or expectation. So, when I'm watching these movies, I'm just watching them like some dude that just sat down to watch a superhero movie. Whereas these other two nerds on this show have billions of hours of expectation and headcanon and all kinds of stuff coming into it. And then, like typical fanboys, their needs were not met and they whine about it.
I will
Here we are.
say,
I
I will
don't think
say,
I like that characterization.
objectively as a film, it was good.
Really?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
just, but again, the subject matter is Superman, and they just can't get that right. So it's like,
Yeah,
come on.
and it's something the listeners might not realize about me is that I am something of a Superman fan. And so,
Yeah, they certainly might not get that.
yeah. Um,
I am as well, by the way.
so like I wasn't raised in church, but I was raised in comic books, and it was kind of like like Superman was kind of like my training wheels for religion, among other things, but largely Superman. But yeah, I thought I hated the Zack Snyder movies until I saw the James Gunn movie, and I feel like I need to go find Zack Snyder and apologize to him.
Well, it's
Um,
funny. I would say you'd take both movies, put them together, and then add a third guy to get the mood right, and you'd have a really good movie. So,
So you're saying there's good parts of this one, good parts of the other
because
one, and
I'm the brooding, sad Superman in the Snyder films is just that's what hope is all that brooding and nonsense. Where
yeah,
where this film has the colors right and the happiness and kind of the campiness that Superman always holds, traditionally.
see, I don't think it's supposed to be campy. I think that's a crutch for somebody who like the 78 movie was not campy. It had campy elements, but it took Superman very seriously. Um,
Hey, and I think he's kind of witty and funny, and people try to do stuff that like really that's Superman. Why are you punching him? You know, it's funny.
Bad
Uh,
vibrations.
yeah, and the you rescuing a cat from a tree and things of that nature. So it's always cute. You can get cute with Superman.
Yeah, and like
You can't get cute with Batman.
yeah. Well, except Superman, like he was never like I feel like I'm coming at this from the wrong angle.
And
Like,
you have to Clark Kent's a goofus too, so that makes it campy.
um, yeah, but that's actually, I mean, that kind of makes the disguise work. And that's another thing that I hated this movie because it was so much more cynical and nihilistic.
What is when you say cynical? What do you mean?
Well,
I mean, I know what
so
cynical means, but like what about the movie without plot points, like just from a broad point of view, what
well,
do you
from a character standpoint, um, like we're told a lot about how good this Superman is, how optimistic this one is, and as an overcorrection from the Zack Snyder t telling. Like in that one, he was moping around, he was pessimistic. I thought that was cynical, and it was, but this was far more cynical in that he did make him. Um, he made a very fine point about how virtuous Superman is, but instead of in really all iterations, because he's so virtuous and good, he's a source of inspiration to people around him. He's the moral center of the DC universe. He's the moral authority over the Justice League. They've done like umpteen many story arcs in the comics about like there's a the Flash movie was based on that. It's called the Flashpoint Paradox. The Flash went back in time, caused a time boom, broke the timeline. So Superman didn't land in Kansas. Um, the world didn't have a Superman, and so it was this dystopian um, hellscape where the Themyscirians were at war with the Atlanteans, and like they didn't have Superman as a moral example, and so they didn't have the Justice League, and they didn't have just the bright, hopeful DC universe that we all know. They've done all kinds of stories like that where he like the fact that he's so virtuous is a source. He's someone to aspire to, and he has this unfailing moral authority that everybody acknowledges. In Superman the movie, it's the butt of jokes throughout. Like nobody takes him seriously. He's kind of he's depicted as this sort of naive man child who's just kind of bumbling around while the adults and grown-ups get things done around him. Uh, and they kind of chide him for being you know, so gentle and good. And it never really relents. Like he's never really the Superman that you saw in 1978, where he is deadly earnest in telling Lois Lane that I'm here to fight for truth and justice in the American way. And she has this kind of dismissive attitude toward it. And then he very politely corrects her on her cynicism. Surely you don't mean that, Miss Lane. I never lie, Miss Lane, and they believe him, and it's done in utter sincerity and earnestness, and they didn't shy away from how good he is. I don't think Hollywood can make a faithful adaptation of Superman in our current era because they're embarrassed by him, they're ashamed of him, and I don't think they have the moral wisdom to do him justice. So
do,
they
do
eat.
is it possible that it's not that we're embarrassed by him, but the concept doesn't resonate because our culture doesn't understand the idea of what that would look like today?
I think that's a part of it, but that's true most acutely of the Hollywood of the James Gunns and Zack Snyder's. Like for Zack Snyder, he has to deconstruct him and drag him through the mud. James Gunn has to make basically this movie was a parody of Superman, where James Gunn kind of just made a joke out of the
See,
fact that Superman is so good.
I guess I always, and again, I come into Superman movies with a different lens. I felt like what Snyder was trying to do was give him a redemption arc. because Superman's never had to have a redemption arc because he was always just perfect, right? And so
Well,
Snyder's like, well, if I dirty him up, then when we bring him back around, then he's really that beacon of hope. Because if even Superman can fall but can get back up again, so can you. That was I mean that's actually oddly deep because I didn't take that from watching it in the moment, but as we're discussing it now, that's kind of how I viewed it. And
well,
and the Superman you're talking about could never fall because he was so morally pristine and
well,
physically incorruptible.
they have done things like that in the comics where he has fallen in his own eyes at least.
Mhm.
And like it's a perfect example in Man of Steel when he like a lot of people complain about him killing Zod, like they thought that was un-Superman like.
Mhm.
Um
Which it
when
is, but I mean,
well,
we've
I
never
don't
seen Superman put in a position where he had to do it.
well, in the comics he did do it. He did kill him. And it was way more cold-blooded than that.
Well, early Superman killed everybody
Well, ki-
before the
kinda.
70s, like before we were born. That 50s Superman or 60s, whenever that other TV version of Superman was on,
George Reeves.
that dude was murdering people. He was throwing
Uh,
people off buildings and shit. Like,
It's kind of like when you're
I don't
watching
think I don't think the George Reeves Superman threw people off of buildings.
oh, he absolutely did. I remember watching clips of it going, I was jarred by it because I'm like, that's
Uh,
not, and
it's funny to me.
but I mean, super special effects were different, right? So he was
Right.
like, it was just like they're on a rooftop and he like just punches the guy and the guy just flies off the rooftop. I mean, we don't see the man die, but
Kind of
I
like
don't, I don't know how you
when
survive that.
Captain America shows up to that ship and he just starts kicking dudes off the ship and like he kicks one dude, he like his back like busts against him. Like me and Cooper are like, oh, that guy's got a broken back
He'd
minimum.
never walk in again.
He hopes he's dead. Cap, Mr. Steve Rogers, Mr. Good Guys, killing
Yeah.
everybody.
well, in the comics, he went to he was in a pocket universe where the three Kryptonian villains had killed everybody on that Earth, and so he executed them with kryptonite. Um,
Okay.
and it was, but he paid a price for it when he was so traumatized by having done that that he developed this. I mean, it seems kind of this wouldn't work in a movie, and I'd be complaining if they made a movie out of this. But he developed an alternate personality called, and where he patrolled at night as this vigilante called Gangbuster. And when he realized this was what was happening, he believed himself to be dangerous, so he exiled himself from Earth, and it was a that would make a cool movie. But anyway, there's like there are ways to write him without sidestepping the fact that he is that moral exemplar. Um, which is kind of which brings us to the reason we're doing the show. He's a Christ allegory. Um, and I think I think they have such a hard time faithfully adapting him because that's the part they're shying away from. Whereas in the 78 movie, they leaned into it. Now, Zack Snyder was pretty ham-fisted in depicting that, but I think Zack Snyder is a kind of a different case. But
Or
anyway,
could it be that they have such a problem with this Christ analogy because that's not how he was originally designed?
um, well, that is how he was originally designed. But
No. In the movie, but not by the original writers. Like that was never stated by them.
Is it a,
it.
is that
I'm
a
sorry. Go
Jewish
ahead.
joke?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, we've had this conversation on the show before, right? So I'm not trying to invent new ground.
Yeah,
I find it wildly absurd to think that two Jewish comic book writers sat down and said, let's make the most powerful comic book being ever, and let's make him Christian and make him like basically Jesus. That makes a lot of sense. Like it's just an odd thing. Now, if you're going to tell me that the movies when they wrote them that they purposely did that, I can see that because
but
the time and the place that it's being done and all those kinds of things, but they were adapting something and then turning it into something it subtly wasn't. Maybe they ruined Superman trying to make him a Christ symbol.
All of the facts disagree with you.
There's no fact that disagrees with me because there's nothing that says that these two Jewish guys that wrote Superman purposely made him a Christ model.
Well, but purposely is doing a lot of work there. But he's always been understood to be that from the very beginning, like in the radio serials in the 19 in the early in like 1940. The
Again,
Kents.
I don't disagree with you that it was modified to be that way. Like I think that's
No,
I think that's a slam dunk.
no. That's not what I'm saying. I mean, first of all, let's just step back and look at the concept. He's the only son sent from the heavens to be the savior of the world. That's baked into the original concept. The fact that
He
they're
wasn't the only son, he was a son. There was a
he's
whole
the
bunch of sons on Krypton.
he's the sole survivor of the Doom planet Krypton.
Survivor. Yeah, okay.
But the fact that he's the only one of his kind that they made a very fine point of that. He's the only son sent from the heavens, sent to be the
Right. Again,
savior of the world.
you're picking up.
He's called Son of Krypton often.
Right. But my point is, you're picking a phrasing that supports that. He's the sole survivor is a similarly true statement, which makes a very different premise
the thing
than
is,
the only son.
okay, the thing is, like, don't take this the wrong way, but you've read like two Superman comics in your
Sure.
entire life.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, every like comics historian, scholar, academic who has looked at this, like that's pretty much the consensus. But it's also you don't even need like scholars to look at this. This is how they understood it at the time in the late 30s and 40s, as evidenced by the fact that in the radio show, when they first name his parents on Earth, the Kents, they're named Joseph and Mary Kent. Now that was changed because it was too on the nose, and it was Eben and Sarah Kent in a 1942 novel, and then it eventually became Jonathan and Martha Kent. But the fact that they started out as Joseph and Mary Kent was just the writers of the radio show just acknowledging what it was, that he's a Christ allegory. And in the movies, in the 78 movie, when this stuff was made more explicit, they weren't adding elements to it. They were just drawing out what was already there. And Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, I will 100% grant that they have denied any deliberate Christian allegory, but the elements are still there for everyone to see. And there's also the fact that like some people have made the point that no, he's more like Moses being put in the basket and sent down the Nile to save him from from the doom of his people. It could very well have been that because they were Jewish, they were drawing upon different elements from biblical heroes, and what they wound up with was
No,
somebody.
I think I mean, and I'm not looking for middle ground. I think that's more reasonable. And that if everybody took from it and then they amplified it and they sat back and kind of a la Quentin Tarantino, what's in the case?
Yeah.
They're like, whatever you think is in the case is what's in the case. And
And there's an interesting parallel here to medieval Judaism. When you read rabbinical Judaism, when they're writing about the Messiah and they're trying to kind of come up with a composite of what the Messiah will look like when he comes, and they're drawing from all the different elements from the Old Testament, what they wind up with looks an awful lot like Jesus, even though they're deliberately trying to avoid Jesus. Like they had a specifically they were trying to deal with like how do we deal with these triumphant King David images along with these suffering servant images. So what they came up with was two messiahs, a messiah of the line of Joseph who would be slain by this evil antichrist figure named Armilus, and then Messiah ben David would descend from heaven and raise him from the dead and then establish God's kingdom on earth. But basically you still have this suffering servant that resembles Jesus, even though they're trying to get away from that. So if a couple of Jewish kids in Ohio are kind of doing the same thing, but putting it in secular American sci-fi language, Superman's what they came up with, and he looks a lot like Jesus, and that's not even a like a controversial statement among comics historians and scholars and academics. So,
Okay.
And even in this latest movie, there's tons of imagery throughout the thing that looks
Yeah.
very, very, very Christ-like. You know, symbols being held up. You know, basically walking the gauntlet of hate. And the same thing with Snyder when people are like throwing things at him and
Hmm.
whatnot, and they give a very, very last temptation of Christ feel as he's walking through there on his way to
Right.
go, submit to the man.
yeah,
Yeah, that's
Snyder's
fair.
version, he may as well have had a chyron under the screen saying Superman is Jesus.
A, a,
Like
a,
when he's in the church praying and right over his shoulder is a stained glass image of Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
pretty
it
stark.
it
Yeah.
was it was pretty it was pretty ham-fisted. Meanwhile, and this is another problem with it. The Clark Lois Superman love triangle, that is the soul of the character, and they keep shying away from that or bypassing it entirely.
by love triangle, you're talking about the fact that Lois is in love with the idea of Superman, but she's actually around Clark because he's the real version of him.
Right. Like
Yeah.
people make fun of the disguise. Well, can't she just look at Superman and see that
Hmm.
I mean, can't she just look at Clark and see that he's Superman with glasses on?
Right.
Which misses the point. The point is she doesn't look at Clark.
She looks right past him. Yeah.
Right. She's too in love with Superman to notice Clark, and that's kind of the whole like and there's so many layers to that it's like people complain that Superman is so powerful it's hard to write for him. Well, that's where the tension and the drama is. It's in that love triangle. Everything else is just kind of external to that.
Filler.
And
It's like saying that the zombies in The Walking Dead were the filler to the problem is really that the humans can't get along. It's not about the zombie apocalypse itself.
yeah, yeah, kind of like that.
Yeah, I can dig
Um,
that.
And I think they're so lazy in the dilemmas that they give them. So this guy is super powerful. Like, hey, you have this option or this option, and you can't do them both. So good luck, Superman, right? And
Right.
and this movie has a few of them, like where always when he's battling, there's always dilemmas, right? Because he's always trying to save people while he's fighting things. So
Hmm.
this is a
Hmm.
normal thing, a theme that goes through. It doesn't matter what Superman movie you watch. So there's a couple of really distinct where he's trying to save things from stuff while he's fighting someone who's difficult to fight. And also, very much like the 78 movie when Les sent the rockets, one to Hackensack, New Jersey, and one to California.
Hmm.
Can't stop them both,
Right.
right? So
Everyone has their faults.
there's then so there's an element of that in this new movie, and they don't pull on that string at all. They just say it and then
Move on.
okay, yeah, like he doesn't even. I don't even think he even contemplates like, oh, I gotta go. Oh, what? And
Hmm.
then they don't even show how he comes to the conclusion or it looked a little lazy.
So
Yeah.
I mean, did it seem like they're trying to set up more? And again, not don't want to get into the plot, but I mean, does the movie end in a finality moment, or is it, setting up the universe? Is this the reboot
Um,
of multiple Supermans to come?
it's supposed to be the reboot of the DC cinematic universe.
Okay.
And so presumably that includes more Superman. Um,
Okay.
I kind of personally hope that it bombs and then Elon buys DC Comics and makes me the new James Gunn because I have an awesome Superman movie in my head that
I
would
heard
that
And Matt,
would
I
be faithful
think
to him.
I think with the success of these latest what what is the movie with John Cena and Harley Quinn and
The Suicide Squad.
the Suicide Squad themes is going like the other metahumans are kind of a joke.
Hmm.
and that's a little bit of a spoiler, but it's like I really hope that they're not doing that to the Green Lantern. And
Well, yeah, I mean, it was interesting because at the end of was it Black Adam,
uh,
when the Man of Steel Superman makes an appearance, right? And they were kind of setting up that top tier,
sure,
meta-human problem
right,
dilemma. Like that was like, ooh, this could get spicy, right? Like a couple of unbeatable dudes, and like, where's Shazam when we need him, right? It's like we're gonna have a couple of these guys show up, and who's gonna win? Um, but that's again, that's the problem statement with all of these superhero movies. I mean, going back to, flip to the other universe, which I know a lot more about, the Marvel universe, they didn't know how to handle Captain Marvel, right? Because, she shows up and she can't just, solo Thanos. Well, she should have been able to because she's Captain Marvel, right? Like the Scarlet Witch could have just blinked reality away and done all kinds of things that she wanted to, but she didn't because plot armor, right? So you've got that problem also. Um, I mean, they definitely, I mean, what I do know about the DC universe, not the cinematic universe, but the comic universe, is there's enough ultra huge problematic bad guys to give Superman things to deal with. But Brian, to your point, that has nothing to do with what you're suggesting the real storyline is, right? Because
Yeah, the real story,
that's just fireworks in the background.
right? And yeah, the real story is like his superness is his kryptonite because it isolates him.
Hmm.
Um, like he desperately he wants to be accepted as a human on human terms, most acutely in the person of Lois, but being Superman, he's isolated. She can only worship him, and he can't reciprocate her love except as an equal. So he divests himself of everything super, and then comes to her on her terms. And he picks a job where his powers don't really give him an advantage. Like
Right.
there's
He could have been a cop or a special forces guy
right,
or a football player and
like
been like, look at how good I am.
he can only write what people are willing to go on the record to tell him, and
Right.
he has to like he's on a level playing field, but he actually believes in that more than what he does as Superman in
But
terms of its long-term meaning.
it,
But because he's divested himself of everything ostensibly super, now he doesn't have any advantage in winning Lois's love, and that's kind of and there is there and I think that's where much of the Christian allegory is as well.
but
Like,
isn't that I want to pull on that, but isn't that a sense, seemingly what it was that Snyder was trying to embody with the broodingness, right? Because you kind of pushed back on all of that, but it seems like there's more than enough reason for Superman to brood because of all of his lack of engagement and acceptance and fitting in, right? Like, doesn't that,
well,
irrespective of how powerful you are, if you're lonely,
e-
right?
except for the fact that self-pity is completely alien to his character, and that's part of his virtue. Like he doesn't like he knows full well that he could just and that this is again the Christ allegory. Christ could go to the pinnacle of the temple and throw himself down and everyone would worship him,
Hmm.
but he doesn't want their loyalty on those terms. He wants to come to them on mortal terms. He wants them to recognize who he is because of his character and his teachings and God's God's character in him, not because of these kind of flashy demonstrations of power.
Interesting.
And so, uh, I mean, yeah, if you like, there's plenty of reason for Superman to mope around and be emo, but he doesn't because he's Superman. That's the thing that Zack Snyder doesn't get. Like, that's not what a person of his moral quality does. Um,
Yeah, and
so
I guess I go back to the audience to which these writers are writing, right? Because, and I think you even said this in our our planning dialogue, right? So maybe I'm stealing your thunder, but
You can have it.
often reference the market in which, modern churches are pitching their services, right? That they're selling themselves to this marketplace. Movies are doing the same thing, right? You can only write the movie to the level of the audience that's going to consume the movie. And if you come in with bigger, broader, more grandiose ideas, but it doesn't land, then it's not going to get eyeballs. And at some level, that's necessary, right? Like if you make the best
I,
Superman movie in the world, but nobody sees it, did you really
I,
accomplish anything?
I think they could still make it look cool. They could still use the music. They could still, um, you know, tug at your heartstrings in moments. But it seems like this movie just kind of bounced from feeling to feeling to feeling without tugging on any of it.
Really?
So so it seems like from the I guess to your point to a shallow audience member, they would say, "Wow, I really felt that." Because there's moments where you're like, "Oh man,
Hmm.
like, oh, ooh, oof, hate to be him," right? But
Oh yeah, he gets his ass kicked just nonstop for the
Right.
whole
Yeah,
movie.
I've seen the
yeah,
clips. They've shown a
Like
few of
it
those in the
doesn't stop.
previews.
And if he's not getting physically brutalized, he's getting like crapped on by Lois or by his or by the Justice Gang or by his dog or by
for real.
like
Yeah.
nobody takes him seriously in this movie. Like and
I thought a real interesting spot, you know, as
But
they,
hang on, Dre, real fast.
yeah,
Like, again, because I haven't seen it. But
right.
Brian, doesn't that actually make it more accurate? Because that was, Christ had some of those same challenges with no man's a prophet in his own land and all
well,
that kind of stuff.
except that the my issue with it is that that's what Clark Kent is for. Superman is to be super. And but except
But
James
wasn't he
Gunn,
still at the end of the movie? Like, no spoilers, but like I'm going on a limb that Superman doesn't die at the end and like everything's good
well,
and the happy music plays and everybody hugs and like the movie roll credits, right? Like that's how all superhero movies end, except the
you're
Avengers.
I think if you watch this one with that expectation, all like the musical cues tell you that's what happened.
Right.
But if you pay attention to like to what's actually happening, he's he's largely just like a he goes from being a punching bag to a passive spectator in most of the movie.
Okay.
Um, and and a lot of this is because James Gunn has, as Superman, he has the personality of Clark Kent. Like he's full of all
Interesting.
the,
He does. He does.
golly gee whiz, oh, gosh darn it, and what the
He
hey,
does
dude, and
interesting. So he doesn't drop the golly gee and go, "Well, ma'am, that's because I'm Superman," and
Right.
then
Yeah.
flies off and like does
He's
whatever. I
yeah,
get what you're
he's
saying.
super Steve Rogers. Like he doesn't say language, but
well,
rest the
except Steve Rogers actually like they take him seriously as a moral authority.
true.
Superman,
In fact, they defer to him
Right. He
as a
he
moral
he
yeah,
authority.
is the de facto leader because of his
Right.
moral compass. Yeah.
yeah, he can get up and just like give an inspiring speech just off the cuff, and everyone wants to like go into battle with him.
Right.
Superman in this iteration, he's just kind of like he's like Forrest Gump, um,
I
with
don't,
superpowers.
I don't know. I'd go that far, but yeah, kind of, I kind of agree with that, Fred. You know, this is the first time that Lex Luthor didn't respect him, and
Hmm.
that's a weird thing to say, but
Interesting.
like his whole issue with him is just, you know,
I hadn't even thought of that, but
like
that's actually
you're a god and you didn't deserve it, right? You don't deserve to be a god. I deserve to be a god because I'm smarter than everybody else, right? Where he actually calls him dumb. I'm sorry for that spoiler, but he's like, you're dumb.
Hmm.
Or
I was trying to put my finger on what bugged me so much about this Lex Luthor.
they it called him stupid. He called Superman stupid. He's like, I should be defeating you because brain always beats brawn, right? Like, not that is a theme that like Luthor's had throughout. Like, if I don't use my brain, there's no way I can beat this guy, and he's a super challenge for me. But to be like, I should be beating you because you're a big, goofy Forrest Gump with pajamas that can fly fast.
But again, isn't that modern culture, right? Like we've talked about, the culture that we grew up in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, right? Like you got beat up if you were the smart nerd, right? The strong kids got to do whatever they wanted to do. The big kids got away with it. Then in this modern version of humanity that we live in, you get canceled if you bully the smart the nerds, right? And that they're entitled to exist, and their feelings matter, and their safe spaces and all that kind of stuff. So at some level, and again, guys, I'm just grasping at straws
Right, but Superman
conversationally.
Superman is the defender of the nerds, right? And not that I kind of
Sure.
saw myself that way, right? Like
Sure.
I liked a lot of nerdy stuff. Plus, I was larger and athletic. So whenever my friends who were total nerds would get picked on, I would stand in front of them.
Hmm.
I fancied myself as a Superman type character
Hmm.
where I could jump in and defend.
Hmm.
And so to me, you know, what makes Superman special is he's both.
Right. Right.
Right? And I think on a level historically, Lex Luthor has recognized that. And this he just did not. In fact, that was his problem. Like, why is this guy great?
Yeah.
Interesting. I guess in the Christopher Reeves Superman movies, I never really thought of Lex as being respectful, or like it always kind of felt like he was dismissive of Superman. And I'm not arguing with you. I'm just trying to think again.
Right.
My Superman background is hyper limited, but I don't
Yeah.
remember the Gene
Gene
Hackman.
Hackman.
yeah, Gene Hackman's Lex Luthor being uh seeming like he saw Superman as a peer. I always felt like he saw Superman as beneath him.
I think that's valid. I also this is might be an unpopular opinion, but I don't think Gene Hackman's was a very good
And
Lex Luthor.
that could be
Um,
true. Like
but
he's the Lex Luthor I think of when I think of Lex Luthor, because I've
Right.
only seen the movies.
But I will
it,
say, with the material that they had, the actors were good.
yeah, the casting
The
was great,
casting was
Really.
really good.
It
which
was
is almost like makes it more tragic that they were wasted on this crap movie.
And
But
and the guy, never heard of that dude. Like he grew on me. I'm like, you're Superman. Right on.
interesting.
Yeah.
but Lex in the comics, it's typically he sees himself at seeing himself as the equal of Superman is part of his narcissism. Like it's
For
precisely
sure.
because Superman
For
is this
sure.
god among mortals, and Lex says, "Well, It's more about Lex being greater than the rest of humanity,
Yes.
so that only he can stand up against this demigod among us."
Right.
Whereas in this movie, and sort of in the 78 movie, but it was more, but I think the 78 movie was kind of more akin to the comic books, where he like Lex saw himself as above humanity anyway, and then Superman shows up, and now he has a rival for
Okay.
like the
I
most
can see
powerful
that.
being on the planet. And that's kind of the motivation in this Superman movie, except it's, I don't know, Lex is so one dimensional. But there is that kind of, there's nothing like charming or appealing about him.
That's another
Um,
thing. Like,
he's just this like rabid, like one-dimensional cardboard cutout of a villain who just hates Superman for the sake of hating Superman.
I see.
But
he's
in
even
the
like, why? He's like, 'cause I hate you. Okay.
Yeah,
um
I think that's true about the 78 Lexes. You didn't necessarily hate him as a character. You're like, yeah, you're trying to blow stuff up and you're doing bad things, but you're kind of funny, and he had charming qualities, and his interactions with Tessmacher were always, comical, and
He had a bunch of idiots surrounding him.
yeah.
The brightest criminal age of our time, criminal mind of our age, and
Yeah.
he had idiots working for him. So it's good.
Yeah. He's always just
yeah,
yelling, "Miss Tessmacher!"
and he was kind of there as comic relief too.
That's
Right.
um
yeah, yeah.
like he and Otis and Miss Tessmacher were kind of the campy elements of that, of what was otherwise a serious movie, this kind of serious mythic movie.
But again,
And
to me, that goes back to the era, right? It was an
yeah,
era where you didn't make the bad guy cool,
yeah,
right? Because to
that's
Dre's point, all of these, all of his people were all, goofballs because that's how bad guys were portrayed because you didn't ever want your audience to want to be the bad guy, right? They were like, yeah, the bad guy's always a goofball idiot, and then
Where
the
even recently in the Marvel movies, people like
Thanos was
I'm
right
on
and
Killmonger's side,
Killmonger,
or
yeah,
Thanos is absolutely right.
yeah.
So that's an interesting.
Yeah.
But
Or
the the
and then you get even really conflicted with like the Namer stuff, right? Where like was there a bad guy? Like they were both good guys
right
and
same
I got about a third through that movie and I just kind of like
and
lost
Aquaman's kind of like that
interest.
as well.
yeah. Yeah. And Aquaman like 100% it felt it was just a story.
Yeah.
Like why am I on team Aquaman? Like his brother has a claim to the throne. Like what's going on? This guy hasn't been around. Why does he get to be in charge?
Um, I don't,
But I do think back
And
in
why
that
is the Green Goblin down here? Where did
when
he
you
come from?
when you see this movie, I think that you might put it on par
With Man of Steel?
with at least half of the Avenger movies.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, I'm juiced up to go see it now. I was only going to see it because Austin wants to go see it and he's into it and he's like, let's go see Superman. I was like, fine, I'll go see Superman.
it has like a Guardians of the Galaxy kind of feel to it because it's James Gunn. And by the way, I loved all three Guardians of the Galaxy
I'm a,
movies.
Guardians was my
And
biggest surprise. Like,
and I think that's why you're like it's Avengers-esque.
and I didn't even know who the Guardians of the Galaxy were. I'd never read those comic books. I didn't even know they existed.
Most people didn't.
Right.
Right.
And that's kind of why you can put James Gunn on Guardians of the Galaxy because nobody's invested in it. Nobody like he's no one's going to be mad if you ruin it.
There's not a
And
bunch of angry Guardians fanboys going, "How
But
dare
there
you do
are.
Rocket
But
like
there
that?"
are. When you meet a real Guardians fanboy, like that's stupid. They nerfed Drax and
Yeah.
oh,
but
no.
like in the comic books, Peter Quill, like he, just like it's a normal comic trope for you to have your regular name and then your superhero name.
Hmm.
His superhero name is Star-Lord, and that's
Hmm.
what people called him. That's fine in a comic book where that's a trope. It's stupid in live action, and so he can't just go around unironically being called Star-Lord
Right.
without some extremely contrived explanation or make a joke out of it like James Gunn did. And that worked
Hmm.
that's where James Gunn's humor kind of works
Yeah.
for
Well,
that.
and it's funny in that because I loved the Guardians movies, and I don't know if we were recording or not whenever Dre and I were talking about Chris Pratt being in a different movie, and we're like the one with Star Lord in it, right? Like
Yeah,
Yeah.
the
it's
Jurassic
it's
Park.
it's such a trope that we refer to him as Star Lord, not as Chris Pratt, right? So I get your point.
But my point is that kind of humor doesn't work for Superman.
Why
Like
not?
you can't because you have to take Superman seriously because there is that because he is established, there is that built-in fan base. You can't make a joke out of things
And he
that
has an
are
actual alter ego. He is Superman.
Well, but hang on. So when I
Why are we
my
making a joke of
response
Superman?
my response is okay. You can't make a joke out of Superman as the writer. But I guess my question is, why does the consumer have to take Superman seriously? Why can't I like my Superman with a mullet in a tuxedo
um
t-shirt? Like, like I like my
well
Superman to like, I'm here to party, but I keep it casual.
well
I'm like,
because the thing that's resonated about him for the past nearly 90 years is that earnestness. Like he's and you'll see what I mean when you watch the movie. Like in this movie, every moment, every single moment where there's any potential depth or meaning or drama, he has to undercut it with some stupid joke.
yeah,
Like he like
okay, I get what you're saying. And so I'm it's the same thing that many people didn't like about the arc of Thor in the Marvel universe,
Hated it.
right? People hate it, especially Love and Thunder, right? Because it was nothing but jokes and one-liners and
Yeah.
silliness. I loved the Thor movie series. I loved the fact of a demigod, a god, whatever, not taking himself seriously. Right now, I recognize Thor didn't have the responsibility of being the protector of Earth, but he was the protector of Asgard, right? The son of Odin. And in the comics, there was no comedy really wrapping around Thor no more than any other character, right? There was jokes laid throughout comics, all comics, right? There's jokes in Superman, but it's always dry, kind of biting humor versus, you know, upfront, funny. But and maybe it was a Hemsworth thing. Maybe it worked really well because Chris lends himself to that personality. But then I guess maybe then I'm saying, okay, but then it also did it with Star-Lord, right? So like Drax was
Well,
comedic. So I'm getting your point that it's a gun thing.
well, it's James Gunn's style, but the Taika Waititi treatment of Thor,
The
it kind
what?
of the Taika Waititi was the director of Ragnarok and Love and Thunder.
Okay.
His name is Taika Waititi. He's from he's I think he's Maori from New Zealand.
Oh,
So
I thought he was a stormtrooper.
TK from
um
2-1. Why
Yeah,
so
it sounded
surprised?
like the guy that had to take over on
um
duty at the Death
well,
Star.
but like I guess as an absolute rule, no, there's no reason you can make a joke out of anything you want. You can
Mhm.
undercut all the drama you want with cheap laughs. But the more you do that, the more you're trading off an opportunity to make it to do something heroic and inspirational and aspirational. Like if you're turning Thor into a clown, then you can't make him a moral authority. You can't make him an inspirational figure in the way that you could if you took him more seriously. Like if the in the 78 movie, you had some humor, but the humor was not at the expense of Superman. If they had made jokes at the expense of Superman, as if they're making fun of the very concept of Superman, the way that James Gunn
Okay.
made fun of the idea
I
of Star-Lord.
I actually just got it.
Yeah,
And
and see,
so I'm using all of the Marvel, right? Because it's what we have for Gunn's body of work.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at who made the jokes and who didn't. And the one that didn't make jokes was Cap. There was not a bunch of jokes laid around Cap, and when it was a joke, it was almost like he made a joke unintentionally. But
almost every time, yeah.
he never laid a joke out as like a huh? Like
Yeah.
whereas Tony Stark purposely made jokes. Like he was trying to be funny because that was his character. I'm a narcissist. Look at
Well,
me.
except
And then
that's not even what I mean though.
no,
Like
but
if
I'm just saying like it works. Your analogy is working for me because we mentioned earlier that at the end of the day, Cap was the moral authority for the Avengers,
well,
and he was the most serious character on the Avengers.
but it's I'm talking about something else though. Like Iron Man was definitely a heroic inspirational figure despite the fact, I mean not even despite, totally irrespective of the fact that he was
Right,
jokey and didn't
right,
take things seriously until he needed to. I'm
right.
saying that if you make the main character an utter clown through most of the through like they did with Thor, then there's a trade-off there
Yeah.
of and when you're doing that with Superman, which James Gunn does, like he is the butt of the jokes. This is very much, despite how it's marketed and framed, it is very much a parody of Superman that takes away you're diminishing the ability. You're not completely destroying it. Like there's Thor still had some heroic moments. Peter Quill still had some heroic, inspirational moments, but they stood out for the fact that he was a clown most of the time.
Hmm.
But the character himself is not his role within that universe is not to be this the moral center of his world the way that Superman is. And that is a definitive aspect of his character. And if you're constantly lampooning the fact that he's such a good guy, and treating him like he's Forrest Gump, who's kind of bumbling around, among all the grown-ups and professionals who know how to superhero
Hmm.
more the way grown-ups should. Um, it just doesn't work for him. And
Yeah.
it's again, I think this is largely because I don't think we have I don't think modern Hollywood has the moral vocabulary to adapt that kind of a character the way that they did in 1978. And so,
I think first of all, I was going to go back to Thor. I think what really irks me about Thor's arc is that he was kind of an entitled prince, right?
Hmm.
And that's fun because he's the baddest man in this.
Hmm.
He just runs around whooping ice creatures' asses,
Hmm.
protecting Asgard like he does, and come back and get the girls and the food and the thing. But then in Dark World, he had to kind of grow up,
Hmm.
right? Because Odin's gone, his mother gets killed, like Asgard's in trouble and he needs to be the leader they need him to be. And then he became that. And then the very next time we see him, he's reverted, but like he didn't learn anything. And that
Oh,
and that
interesting.
really like and even in Ragnarok, when his whole species gets exiled and have to go find a place on Earth. Now I know he bestowed that on the Valkyrie. Hey, you lead these people because I got other things. But like, where's the reverence for his people and for his mother and for his father god, right? So that's the only thing that really, I mean, they're fun, right? Ragnarok's fun when, Love and Thunder is super fun. But like, did this guy learn anything? Did he grow? Is he a hero? What is he like? So that's annoying. But
So I get it. I think he grew simply because when Cap picked up his hammer, he was happy for him. But the
sure,
first time Cap
sure,
almost picked it up, he was not okay with it.
sure,
So
sure.
like that one thing was his arc. But I get your point is that the macro story seemed to be cyclical with him. It was like
now
grow, revert, grow, revert, grow, revert kind of thing. I get it.
if Thor earlier in the movie hadn't called to Mjolnir and discovered that he was still worthy, I think that moment with, well, of course, causally the hammer wouldn't have even been there at the end of Endgame if that hadn't happened. But
Right.
if we could bypass that and accept a plot hole, I think that would have gone very differently if Cap was able to pick it up in that moment.
Probably. But
But
my point is just he was happy for him, and
yeah,
he wasn't just happy because, hey, I'm not going to die now. It was, I knew it. Like it was
Yeah.
like and it worked in the movie, emotionally for the watch for the viewers also. But I
So
I I, I get it.
over the last week, all the conservative pundits just kind of shit on James Gunn for his comment about being an immigrant and the loss of humanity. Uh, so it's interesting to me that just taking the writer and director at his word, where this is a film about humanity losing itself and
Mhm.
trying to get it back through this symbol. It, it was everybody else who was shitty and they never recovered. So to me, like where's the redemption? Where's the hope? Where's the symbol? You just took a dump all over this guy who's supposed to be this moral authority, and I don't understand where you were going if that was your mindset. This is a story about the loss of humanity, unless he's saying humanity is lost and it's never coming back, right? Brian, you have thoughts on that? Like what?
um, yeah, I mean that kind of sounds, along the lines of what I'm saying is that he
Yeah,
like they don't know what to do with with this morally pure character except either deconstruct him or lampoon him. And
but
but it
nobody else grew either. Like nobody else changed their
well,
ways slightly.
I could I could point out maybe like at least a token way that they did, but
Yeah,
that might ruin it
Spoilers.
might be a
Yeah.
right,
spoiler.
right.
Um,
Well, they had a lot of token stuff. They had a lot of threads you want to pull on, and then they just give you a token answer, and then they move on. And that kind of bugged me.
it's kind of a pastiche of already
A what?
well-worn
Pastiche.
a pastiche, it's just like like a series of kind of unrelated ad hoc tropes from
Okay.
all kinds. Like there's nothing in it that you haven't seen before in another telling of Superman.
Right.
Like even
Right.
like the getting arrested part, which we've seen in the trailers.
But I
Right.
mean, with as many reboots as there are, don't you hit a point where there's no way
Well,
to? I
but
mean, you,
there are new angles you can take with these things, which he kind of does, but he crams so many of them into it
Mhm.
that there like nothing is ever like there's
There's no time to flesh things out because
yeah,
he's
there's
too busy cramming different
right.
ideas in.
There's no care. I
He's
would
cramming in too many pastiches.
too many pastiches.
They
The
could have made
90s.
the entire movie based on the message he gets from his parents. I really think so. Like that is so flushed and swept under the rug. You know, his whole purpose for being on Earth. They kind of break it
Might be
down in the movie. They
It
break
sounds
it
like
down.
you're getting
I
spoilery,
am, but
yeah.
I'm just saying that was to me that was such a and it's early on, and you're like, wow,
so
that's
you're
such a
saying there's something that could have been unpackaged and they didn't, and they just
way,
blew over the top of it.
and
And
they
I think that was deliberate though, Dre. I think he wanted to leave it on there. I think he wants that. I don't know. Maybe in the
no,
sequel
I'm
that'll
not
be
talking
fleshed
about I'm
out.
not talking about you know whether
But
it's
it
true or not. What I'm saying is that that whole him not really understanding who he really is because he did grow up
Hmm.
in middle America with two, and I hate what they did with the Kents, by the way, but
Me too. Yeah.
They didn't make
they,
him gay, did they?
no, they just made
Okay.
him they
They
made him
made him
like a
they made him
bumbling MAGA fool
they made
Oh,
him
oh,
stereotypes of
Too
country
of
super
bumpkins.
country bumps.
red pilled.
I cleaned your
Or
Got
boots.
it.
I'll go get them for you.
Got it.
yeah, Maul, we're talking Paul.
You
Like
should go
Yeah.
see what's on the box.
I hated that choice.
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
every other, it's like they're
Now,
sophisticated farmers and
Right.
everything else.
now if the whole thing hadn't been a lampoon of Superman and they did that, I would appreciate it. I
Because
would
he gave
actually
him
like it.
simple advice, and he's like looking,
Like
he's like, "Oh, okay, Dad, I got it."
like having his parents not be Diane Lane and Kevin Costner or Annette O'Toole and John
Right,
Schneider. Like they're
right.
not these beautiful, well-spoken people. They're just kind of simple, salt of the earth, not outwardly attractive,
Right.
but good people.
I didn't
Like
mind that choice, the way
I
they
I
looked.
I can appreciate if he did that, but he took the character seriously, as if to
Yeah.
say
Even
like
from this, you can get that.
these people that you wouldn't think of as remarkable people were responsible for, you
The
know,
greatest American ever.
right.
Yeah.
But the fact that he spends the whole movie basically making fun of Superman's moral core.
And it makes you think he got his moral core from bumbling idiots in the middle, some country
Yeah.
bumpkins.
So I'm assuming he doesn't fight for truth, justice, and the American way.
Yeah, I was about to bring that up.
Yeah.
That slogan doesn't come up.
Okay.
There's been marketing material like merchandise that has the slogan "Truth, Justice, and the Human Way," which is, I guess that's supposed to mean something, but it's sort of typical global homogenization mindset. I looked up on ChatGPT where that slogan is being used, and without prompting it, it just kind of volunteered all of James Gunn's, or at least Warner Brothers' explanation for why they're using that, because it's more inclusive and they're they want to be inclusive of all humanity instead of making it about nationalism, um, which is kind of tying this back to the divine council worldview. It it kind of the irony is, they don't like truth, justice, in the American way because they think it's exclusive. Um, Instead, choosing truth, justice, and the human way. Do you guys even like what does that mean in you guys' hearing? What do you?
It doesn't. I mean, if anything, I would make it would be a negative thing because humans are pretty shitty animals.
Yeah,
Like broadly, human nature is not good nature.
yeah,
We need some type of way to rein in humans,
Uh-huh.
and that
yeah.
way is the American way. Duh.
And like humans are tend to be tribal.
Very.
Like every other nation on Earth is an ethno state.
Hmm.
You're defined by your common ancestry, and that everybody is kind of by default ethnocentric. America is the only country that's founded on a set of principles that are rooted in Judeo-Christian and Greco-Roman tradition, but they're understood by the framers to be universal principles that apply to all humans. So ironically, in getting rid of the American way instead of the human way, they're making it less inclusive. They're
You
making
made it
it,
tribal. Yeah.
yeah. And it kind of, tying this back to the divine council worldview, the sin at the Tower of Babel was that they were defying God's command to increase and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. He wanted humanity to spread out into nations all over the earth, but instead they wanted to gather into one place and be one people. And that's why he disinherited them. That's why he confused their language so they would have no choice but to spread out and become separate nations. This push toward global homogenization seemed like it in light of that, it seems satanic. It seems like
I don't necessarily disagree with you there.
it seems like it sounds good, like to talk about our common humanity and to dissolve all of our national differences, but it's really not. And you can't just mash different cultures together or treat them all as interchangeable. They're try We're trying that now in the West, and it's to disastrous results. But this whole idea of abolishing the American way in our thinking and stripping Superman of that definitive character aspect, it kind of it speaks to another element of the divine council worldview, that being spiritual warfare, and how stories and the characters that we set up as moral exemplars to aspire to, these are being weaponized against us. Hijacking Superman and turning him into an avatar of in the comics, the slogan has become truth, justice, and a better tomorrow, which is basically just progressivism.
Hmm.
Um, and they're
Yeah, I I think to what you're saying, I want to restate it or re-say it because I think I understand what you're saying. I don't think Brian, to the listeners, I don't think Brian is suggesting objectively it's satanic to repurpose Superman because Superman is so holy and beyond reproach. What you're saying, I think, just give
I'm
me a second. Give me a second. Let me restate what I think you
okay.
said. What you're saying is that to take concepts that are universally good and then to repurpose them under the guise of modern social progressivism and getting along with each other because we don't want to hurt feelings over absolute rights and wrongs is satanic. And Superman happens to fit that when you're talking about it from a 100,000 foot view. Not that the idea of taking this specific comic book and going, yeah, we're going to screw with it. Like God isn't angry
Um,
about that because God loves Superman.
from a well, I uh, you're you're mostly right. The thing that's satanic is the global homogenization
Yeah,
push.
right,
That
right,
that is satanic.
right.
The way that stories are have basically can be weaponized for good or evil. I know growing up with Superman, it I internalized things that I didn't like. That I think were good for me and ultimately led me to Christ. And not just Superman, but lots of stories were used that way. But we often talk about stories as if they're just frivolous entertainment, and you shouldn't take them too seriously, which is profoundly foolish. Um, Leftist activists understand the power that there is in storytelling, and they have used it to great effect to remake our culture. In 50 years, our just as an example, our collective view of homosexuality has done a complete 180. It's not because rational arguments were presented and debates were had, and they won the argument in the culture, and now we now understand objective truths about biology and psychology that tell us that what we once thought was wrong is now right. No, we were reconditioned through stories to think in certain terms. People couldn't tell you rationally what we know objectively now that we didn't know 50 years ago, that everyone's mind has changed because they didn't get there rationally. They were media storytelling was used to change their minds. Um, right now, storytelling in general is being used for satanic ends. That's my general point. But regarding Superman, no, I do think that there is something, because he is a Christ allegory, because he is a he is a type of Christ. And I think that what we do with Superman in pop culture kind of mirrors the way that what we do with Jesus in the religious marketplace. Um, we have so many different varieties of churches that churches tend to just kind of turn Jesus into a mascot for whatever beliefs they already want to hold. Like there was that video going around of the morbidly obese female quote unquote pastor who was telling her congregation that if Jesus were here today, he would be an abortion doula. He would comfort younger women on their way to get an abortion and give them moral support and encouragement. You can go to
Are
a
you
church.
suggesting you don't agree with that?
I yeah.
Okay, I was just being
Case
clear.
that just to be clear, I don't agree with that. I think that's satanic.
I too
You,
disagree
you
with that.
I was I was waiting for you to finish that.
Yeah,
Yeah. No, I don't think
but
there's any room for discussion on that topic, but yeah.
so people who want to advance their views from a religious perspective, they just kind of turn Jesus into a ventriloquist dummy, and they wind up worshiping themselves writ large. Um, Secularists, especially in the comic book industry, they do the same thing with superheroes and with Superman in particular. But given the fact that like Superman is uniquely a Christ figure. In a lot of ways, like superheroes in general are often sort Christ figures. Like if you watch Spider-Man 2, there's a very it's a it's not conspicuous, but once you see it, you know it's there. Um, Spider-Man 2 is basically like almost like a retelling of Superman 2, where he gives up his powers to be with Lois, but and there's all kind like Christ leaving heaven to be with the church, that kind of thing. But you have these kind of undercurrents in superheroes in general, but Superman is he's the prototype on which all the rest are based, and he is the one who's most conspicuously a Christ figure. And I think that I I happen to think that, I think he's an example of what C.S. Lewis was talking about when he talked about how God will send humanity what he called good dreams that are sort of like the gospel in sort of parabolic form. Um, like if you look at like in the book of Genesis, how Joseph is a Christ pattern. Superman kind of is a Christ figure in kind of the same way. and I kind of feel like growing up on Superman, I had certain elements of the gospel sort of internalized without understanding what it was, but I recognized them later when I became a Christian. And I think the more you, I think secularists do with Superman what bad faith Christians do with Jesus, and I think it's to bad effect. And I think if the world got a faithful modern telling of Superman, I think it would have a very positive impact on the world. I think they would discover something they didn't know they were missing, and it would, as it did with me as a child, it would point them to Jesus Christ.
Do
Um,
you think that because secularists don't believe in Jesus Christ at all, but it's sort of a natural thing to intuit Jesus, whether you believe in him or not? Like it's just human nature that there's elements that you don't even know you believe. You just
Like that
let it
adage that
out.
we don't have to tell kids dragons exist. They already know. We have
Right.
to tell them that there's ways to kill the dragon kind of thing. Is that what you're saying?
Kind of. And so do these people, are they writing Jesus allegories without even knowing that they are? Because
I
they don't even recognize the elements. And because the elements are so foreign to them on the outer conscious level, the inner consciousness just kind of lets it out anyway. And because it's not a full picture, it's kind of a shadow of that, kind of like is it Plato that wrote the allegory of the cave?
Yeah.
You know, so I think maybe they just see Jesus as a shadow on the wall, and that's the depiction they create with these superheroes.
Brian, before you respond to that, Dre, you wanna back up and explain the allegory in case anybody's listening that's never heard of that before?
Yeah, if I can remember
I
it.
mean, just at a high level.
Yeah,
At a high level. I mean, I'll do it. I mean, I'll give
sure.
my rough version of it, and then Brian can tell me what I'm wrong about. But essentially, Plato wrote an allegory that is like a foundational philosophy kind of discussion, right? And these people are in this cave and they're being kept prisoner, and they're never allowed to turn around, and they only see on the cave wall the shadows of what's happening from the flames and the sunlight and all the stuff that's reality. So reality is happening behind them, and they're only seeing a shadow story of that, and they have to build in their own heads what's going on because they have no point of reference. I mean, that's there's a deeper level to it, but that's
Sure.
the 400,000 foot view of it.
And if you don't have a point of reference
Iron
of
Age
Jesus,
Matrix.
What?
It's like the Matrix in the Iron Age.
Oh, okay. Yeah. But it's just it's a starting point for anybody that's never heard of that before. It's a starting point for a lot of philosophical conversations about, what were they really seeing? What did they think when they turned around? There's a lot of different things you can do with this, but the point is kind of what Dre was getting at is if you don't know from which your, story is coming, do you really understand it fully? And I think it's an interesting point, Dre, because it's funny because without trying to rehash one of our opening discussions on the show, my point about two Jewish comic book writers writing a story about Jesus is laughable. But to your point, maybe it was somehow channeled into them, right? I still don't think they did it intentionally, but they could have very well done a perfect job of writing a Christ allegory without intending to, because
Yeah.
maybe the story's inside of us and it's trying to come out. Maybe it was inspired to if
sure.
Brian's going off into a place that I think is a little too far, but it's possible. Maybe this story is intended to be a way to bring the story of Jesus to the masses without it sounding like religion. And if so, it could very well be inspired. And
Well,
it's pretty cool, by the way, if it's true. I don't know that I would, you know, rest my
uh,
laurels on it, but I'm not willing to shit on it either because I mean it's a certainly a neat idea.
yeah, and I don't, Dre, I don't know that I would put it quite as strongly as you have. Like I don't know that I wouldn't say for sure that God is definitely inspiring comic book creators to, for Superman. Um,
I'm not sure I said that. I think I say more of it's our human nature to understand that there is a higher power right?
Sure.
Whether we believe it or not, it's part
Well,
of us, and it kind of exudes in our way of life and what we think and what morals are. And
yeah,
Almost like some kind of
but
mitochondrial DNA
but
and
it
like repressed knowledge.
right,
it's often been observed by scholars and academics that modern superhero comics, they're kind of the updated secular American sci-fi versions of the Greek and Roman gods.
sure,
They kind of now I've thought a lot about this.
they mimic
Having
all of our flaws and all the things
well,
that
but
humans do.
more fundamentally, they're meeting a need that these ancient religions used to meet. Um, and it's and I've often kind of like I still kind of struggle to understand like what is it about about superheroes that we find so appealing, and this and like deconstructions like Watchmen and The Dark Knight Returns kind of explore that. Like, what is it about us that these are that these are our wish fulfillment fantasies? But whatever it is, like the observance that it kind of it fills the place that the pagan gods used to fill. Um, it's worth noting that to ancient people, like this wasn't kid stuff. This wasn't Saturday morning cartoon stuff. This is what adults did for worship, and these like the stories of the gods were what this was. Kids were involved, but a lot of like coming of age rites for young men involved being brought into these mysteries of the gods. So it wasn't the stuff of children's cartoons for them. It was a very adult oriented activity that was meeting a very pervasive universal need for humanity. And it's kind of ironic to me that like church is so boring. It is I don't think that's a shocking and controversial thing to say, although it's not, people don't often like to say that, but let's face it, it's super boring. Um, and that's a big reason that church is dying, but people are flocking to superheroes. Um, and the irony is that so much of what makes them interesting, they're drawing from the Bible. They're drawing from the material that churches should be thriving on and communicating to their people. The movies are, and it's not just Superman, it's The Matrix, it's Harry Potter, it's Lord of the Rings, I think we'd be hard pressed to find a pop culture franchise that doesn't incorporate elements from uh from the biblical narrative or um biblical imagery. But I really believe that in a few centuries, academics are going to be studying superhero comics within the field of comparative religion because it doesn't seem like that to us now because we have everything kind of siloed off in a weird kind of 20th century post Enlightenment way. But if you look at all of this within the full sweep of history, superheroes fit very much within the realm of religion. And I think they're meeting that need. And I think the church is at a disadvantage until we kind of figure out why that is and what we're missing and how we present the Bible. So
Hmm.
That is an interesting thing you said about how those God stories were an adult uh, thing. We've taken our Saturday morning cartoons and we've turned them into PG-13 movies. We've taken comic books that were ostensibly for younger people, and those younger people grow up, and those younger people are the ones that now make money. And you have overgrown children that live in basements and collect toys and go to Disneyland unironically without their children, right? Like it's kind of weird how we're taking our child fantasies and we're following along with them as we grow. I mean, no one's saying that Disney can't be fun, and no one's saying that animated films aren't good, but you should have
I
a
like that
different
he's cutting
reason.
his eyes into his house as he's saying this.
So, I but
And I'm looking around at my toys I have on the wall back here.
and you know, but when I went to Disneyland after having children, it was a completely different reason. When I was 12 to 17, it was about me getting on the rides. When I was in high school, it was about me meeting girls from
I was going to say it's
other
about
cities.
seeing girls to get on the
Right.
rides. Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
Yeah.
and now, it's about watching my granddaughter ride
hmm
Space Mountain for the first time.
right.
Those are
Yeah.
the core memories I have, in my 40s, right? So it's an interesting thread that we all become distracted man children.
Well, it is a very peculiar thing to our generation, though.
Yes.
Like it used to be that comic books were aimed at kids of a certain age range. And they would kind of they were writing them with the understanding that the kids rating today in 5 years they're going to be like driving cars and chasing girls and doing and moving on to other things and so they'd kind of recycle a lot of the stories and it's
Hence the low birth rate now.
um but then for our generation when I was in that age that comic books have always been aimed at, the comic books just kind of kept growing with me. Um,
hmm
like in night, it was
More
in
adult
night,
in nature.
yeah, in 1986, they published two things happened. They published Watchmen by Alan Moore, which Zack Snyder adapted the movie, and Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns, much of which Zack Snyder used in Batman versus Superman. Christopher Nolan used elements of it in The Dark Knight Rises. Um, but those were reviewed in the New York Times as graphic novels and treated as adult literature. And now all of a sudden, comic books were for grown-ups and they weren't called comic books anymore. They're called graphic novels. And now it's respectable to read them. And they kept kind of aiming them at older and older audiences, like right as I was, reaching the age where I shouldn't have been reading comic books anymore, but they kept aiming it at me and they kind of did that with everything. Like there was a minute there in the 90s and early 2000s when people of our generation were growing up and then they started like tapping into nostalgia to make Transformers movies and
hmm
GI Joe movies
Right.
and
Well, it goes on and on. We've got video game bars,
That was gonna
right?
be my next, yeah.
There's one here in Oklahoma City. It's called Flashback Bar and Grill, and it's full of original '80s
yeah,
video games.
Chuck E. Cheese is relaunching but for
Right. Right. We
adults.
had Dave and Buster's came out, right? We're a unique generation, Gen X's, in that I feel like we're the first generation where the adults just decided we're going to continue to have hobbies. Because if you think about previous generations, grown-ups didn't have hobbies, specifically men, right? Like maybe they had a bowling league,
They had a club, right? Some kind of
right?
club which
Or
involved bowling or pool or darts.
Shriners, or
Right.
But
the Elks Lodge, which was really
Right.
just an excuse to drink, is really all it was. But it had a structure around it, right? There was just a reason to go get drunk with the boys. But our generation just decided, you know what? I'm going to keep playing video games, or I'm going to be on a softball league, or I'm going to
What
whatever
have you?
those
Yeah.
things are, right? Like we have hobbies and it's not frowned upon because we all just decided across our whole generation this is what adults do now. And it's
well,
it's it's interesting.
except it's not just hobbies. It's like comic books are specific at people my
Oh,
age.
but it's a hobby though. Reading is a hobby, or reading
Read,
comic books or whatever is a hobby. I'm
yeah,
kind of lumping those things together.
yeah, but I'm making the point that it's stuff that every generation previous to ours, like you were expected to grow out of that.
Right.
But for whatever reason, it's and like
I think you guys are saying the same thing.
Yeah, we are.
Well, but
Yeah.
but I think a hobby could be like woodworking. Like there's nothing about bowling that would be specifically for kids at any particular age.
But
Or
woodworking is one of those ones that old men did. I'm talking about like fun hobbies, like skydiving or just being recreational, I guess. Maybe hobby is the wrong word, but being frivolously recreational is
well,
accepted
but but
by our
And
generation.
but a grown man jumping out of a plane for recreation wouldn't have been made fun of the way that a grown man reading comic books would have been in the 70s and 80s.
Sure. But it
That's
still
my
would have
point.
been made fun of.
But
All of the
for
other grown-ups would be
but
like,
but for
when are you
different
going to grow
reasons.
up and
I
stop jumping out of an airplane?
but for different reasons though.
Okay.
And I think and it's I
and
I
and
don't
and our
I don't know what the explanation for that is, other than that they've been marketing to us since for
our
that time.
our our pop culture influences also, like we're heavily influenced by a comic book. Like here we are, with
Maybe it's
grandchildren influenced by comic books.
maybe it's as simple as uh I don't know, that to the point of, and Brian, you said this earlier, I think you were talking about, how a culture is influenced is by the storytelling, right?
Yeah.
In the 50s, in the 60s, in the 70s, right? 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, Americans were influenced by the New York advertisement agencies, right? Like everything that we learned was driven by some ad agency. There was an ad to push this,
Yeah.
right? So, New York was the center of whatever America was going to do. And I wonder if, to the point of, we continue to read comic books, we continue to play video games, our storytelling comes from other places. And so those the ad agencies don't have all of the power that they used to have. They still have some, obviously, but not the
Well, it's
dominant
it
power.
it's been democratized.
Yeah.
Um, it
Yeah. It's
and
it's interesting. I almost feel like this is worthy of some kind of like anthropological study or something. I need to call
Yeah,
like
I mean, just for the fact that we use fiction to study actual issues in politics. For example, recently with the adolescence film, and in England, the BBC's
mm,
like
yeah, that's
interviewing
another.
somebody saying, "Hey, I'm dealing with stabbings." Well, yeah, but what about the manosphere and the problem? Like, well, what are you talking about? Like, well, did you watch Adolescence? Like, lady, adolescence is not a real thing, right? And I think the same with
do
and
you know
we
what
did
they're
that.
saying on 4chan?
We uh we did the same thing with One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Like all of a sudden, you watch that movie and all of the abuses that were going on in the insane
Mm.
asylums, quote unquote, was actual abuses, and that's exactly what happened in all of these hospitals. So California started to get rid of those hospitals, and they no longer became a place where schizophrenics and
And now they roam the streets and they vote.
yes. So and it's because all of the things that was thought of as fact were actually just pieces of a book and a depiction of Jack Nicholson on film
Hmm.
and not reality. It's
Yeah,
kind of like the
it's
adolescence syndrome 50 years before.
yeah, it's examples of stories being weaponized. I don't know that the One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest was deliberately weaponized, or it's just people were taking it the wrong way. But
I think
adolescence
it
is
was
absolutely definitely a political weapon to serve a certain agenda. Um,
I've never even thought of that, but it makes
I think it's I think it's Michael
it checks
Schellenberger
out.
that wrote the book San Francisco and basically just kind of gives a history of some of the progressivism that happens in San Francisco, and
Hmm.
he mentions that
mhm.
book and how policies were actually changed due to that move.
That's crazy.
So another point, I don't know how to work it in smoothly, but it's just kind of lingering back there. Um, and in those days, men began to multiply on the earth, and daughters were born to them. And the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, and took of them as wives any of whom they chose. Um, and he's gone. And then the Lord God saw that. No, sorry, got ahead of myself. the Lord God said, my spirit will not strive with man forever. He is mortal. His days will be 120 years. Now the Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterwards, when the sons of God went into the daughters of men and had offspring by them. These were the warriors of old, or the Gaborim, the men of renown. And sometimes the warriors of old is sometimes translated heroes of old, men of renown. Um, so Dre, welcome back. So I was just quoting Genesis 6 about the Nephilim, how they were called the heroes of old, the men of renown, or that they're called the or the warriors of old, the men of renown. The word for warriors or heroes is Gibborim, which we've discussed before, which means mighty one, strong one. The connotation is that they're a heroic figure, somebody to be admired. And then after that, it's the Lord. Then the Lord God saw that the wickedness of man was great on the earth, and every thought of his heart was only evil all the time, and he was grieved that he had made them. It seems like the fact that the Nephilim were were idolized, that these were the heroes, these were the people that were admired by the people of the time. That was a big part of the corruption that caused God to flood the earth. Like humanity was corrupted not just because there were Nephilim roaming around eating people, and not just because the Watchers had given them forbidden knowledge, but because they had been so corrupted that they saw the Nephilim as heroes. They wanted to be like them, um, and that led to the flood. That led to God's wrath. And then in the Tower of Babel, oh, he's gone again. At the Tower of Babel, when they were trying to build a tower into heaven, a ziggurat, so that the Watchers could return
Mhm.
and father more Nephilim. And this along with other things we've discussed led to God disinheriting the earth. But uh, the takeaway from all that, as it pertains to Superman and storytelling and comic books, is the, the heroes of our stories are, who we look up to and who we aspire to be. That is a serious issue. That's a serious part of our moral development. And if our heroes are themselves villains, that that is a corrupting influence.
Mhm.
And so, whether Superman is depicted faithfully as reverently as a Christ figure, or whether he's deconstructed and dragged through the mud the way Zack Snyder did, or whether he's lampooned the way that James Gunn did, that matters. It's not just frivolous entertainment, especially when you're considering little kids looking up to Superman, wanting to be like him. Um, yeah, yeah, they might like the bright colors, but I think they're going to internalize the fact that, like, Superman is good and he's being lampooned for that. He's like, nobody takes him seriously. So if they want to be taken seriously, well, don't be like Superman. Even though we can pay lip service to the fact that he's good and you should be like him, but you don't really want to be a putz. So I'm gonna be ruthless and arrogant the way that Mr. Terrific or Guy Gardner were. But
Yeah. No, I think that's a valid point. I mean, you look at modern culture and, what do we glorify? We glorify, hip hop culture with, you know, gangster rap music, and um, we glorify uh, prima donna athletes that throw fits and temper tantrums on the court when they're making millions of dollars to play a sport, right? You've got um, there's a whole host of bad choices that we're using to make as um, our heroes. Either whether it's for adults or for kids to model and emulate. Um, it's One can see how that's not conducive to a positive cultural um, what's the word I'm looking for? Transmission, right? Or, moving from one place to another. Our glide slope is not good. Uh, Hopefully it's not as bad as what it was in Genesis 6, but it doesn't seem like it's much better. Like I definitely um, can see that point. And you're right, it does matter who you pick to be your hero, right?
or
It's
what
a,
options are given to you.
well, that too, right? I mean, but I mean, I feel like you've always got options, but it's just a matter of what you pick to be, what you decide to center on, right? Like I'm wearing a football jersey, right? And I've always joked that I have a standing rule that grown men shouldn't wear football jerseys of children, right? Like I don't care how much you like the new, basketball player, football player. Like if he's a 23-year-old, what could that 23-year-old possibly do that would make him worthy of your adoration? Like, you sure you're going to watch him and you're going to root for him because you want your tribe to win, right? But to say, I'm going to put some child's name on my back, it seems weird. And I'm not going at anybody who's a sports fan that, reps modern, younger players, but, Bo's certainly older than I am. And I think the only other jerseys I have in my closet is David Robinson and Steve McNair, and one of them's dead.
That
So
that's why I'm wearing this Superman shirt from the 1940s.
yeah, that's a
I
40
remember.
Superman. There you go.
That's from the Fleischer Studios animated
Okay.
show,
Yeah.
which, by the way, was where his flight power originated from.
Because
They
before
they
he could just jump really far.
Yeah, they were trying to animate him leaping tall buildings and like leaping across telephone wires, but
Hmm.
they didn't know how to do it without him looking effeminate like he is a ballet dancer. So they kept like calling DC Comics, well, there was National Allied Publications then, and being like, "Look, can we just make him fly? That would look way better on screen than prancing." And they're like,
And it would
"No,
sell
he
a lot more comics for you.
Yeah.
Well, they kept telling him no, but then so they went ahead and animated it and showed it to him. Like, yeah, that's what we're doing. And they're like, okay, he flies. And that's that's where that came from.
Dre, do you have any thoughts? You were starting to say something, and I know you disconnected.
I don't even remember.
Okay.
So
Fair
I
enough.
was monologuing about how the Nephilim were the heroes of the people at the time, and that was bad because they were monsters, and that led to the flood and
The tower and
the
well, it's kind of like
multiple languages.
how we we idolize celebrities. Somebody that why do I care about who some dude was in a movie voted for? Therefore, I must listen to him on every single topic. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, how is he more in the know than me? But
Yeah.
we do just lend them all of this, you know, grace for everything that they do. Same with athletes. Athletes are part of that celebrity thing. Well,
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
mentioned athletes and I
yeah,
mentioned like hip hop artists and that whole culture
yeah,
that we glorify, and
yeah.
it's not a good culture to glorify.
Rock stars in the 80s,
Sure.
right? Motley Crue and their antics.
Yeah.
I mean, those stories are kind of funny as you read back on them now, but I mean, if I'm my dad, I don't I don't want my 15-year-old boy listening to that shit,
Right.
right? With that's what those guys are doing, right?
Hmm.
Not necessarily the
Absolutely.
devil, but
Right.
they're not good humans,
Right. It ain't godly.
right? And the songs are all about banging 16-year-olds, right? So and now as a girl dad,
Yeah.
you start thinking like, dude, what
Yeah,
the
it's
F,
it's hard to sing a song with your heart when it's she's only 17 and I'm like,
right?
Next song.
You right only because when I was
in my
17, that was
defense,
cool.
I was 12 when that came
But
out.
yeah,
So
but
it was
Right, so it was cool to sing until you were about 18 and then you got to stop
yeah.
listening to the song after that. You got
yeah,
to move on.
it's over. So it's interesting how we idolize things that are not necessarily virtuous,
Hmm.
and then we lend it a level of virtue because we basically worship them, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
like
Well,
the Nephilim, I'm
Yeah.
sure that's what Brian's whole monologue was.
it was.
Well,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
and but it was tying it back to Superman. Like it matters if you get the Christopher Reeve Superman who is good and earnest and he's respected for it and he's a moral authority that people aspire to emulate, or if you get the deconstructed Zack Snyder version who is dragged through the mud and he's moping around and feeling sorry for himself because he doesn't want to be Superman and it's hard and he's or you get
Well,
the
he was confused because he died.
um
He was super confused.
yeah,
but he was
okay.
those before he died.
I know. I know.
Yeah, so,
Or
I
you
mean,
get the James Gunn make fun of him for being good version. Like I feel sorry for kids who are growing up with that Superman, instead of the Christopher Reeve one. But
But did Superman become unpopular because he was too good? I mean, everybody.
That's what I think. And that was
I
kind of
mean,
my point when we started, was saying it's the modern culture is what's rejecting that version of Superman.
if you're a kid and you're trying to be cool, would you rather be the Punisher or would you rather be Superman? Would you rather
that's
be
that
Daredevil or
that
Superman?
it's
Would you?
that's kind of my point
Yeah,
is,
right. And even in this movie, there's a line where someone's like, "Oh, you can't hurt me because Superman would never do that," and the other hero's like, "I'm not Superman."
And
It's
then you're
like,
like, yeah, yeah.
yeah, kill
Well,
him.
yeah,
well, and it's
that was kind of the vibe. It was you're like it was kind of it's one of the examples
Like
of,
Superman's actually wrong, so we're gonna do what we want to do here in the
yeah.
Justice League.
And the audience, the vibe was seemed to be that the audience was supposed to like cheer for that. Like that was
yeah.
so
Yeah,
which
it's funny as you say that, Dre, because I'm sitting here thinking in real time. So stupid thought experiment. If I could be any superhero, who would I pick?
Mm,
Superman's not on my short list,
that'd
right?
be
Of
really
who I
hard.
would pick.
It would suck.
But but if you asked me a different question, which superhero would I want my son to be? My answer, Superman, quickly.
That's an interesting thought
hmm.
experiment.
So who would you be?
The Punisher.
I was gonna say Iron Man, but
I would 100% no hesitation, Superman.
Yeah.
Um,
Mine would either be Punisher or Green Lantern. Hal Jordan Green Lantern.
I'd be I'd
um,
be I'd be Captain America.
mm,
Yeah.
Like
But
like super, but not so super.
but
You
but
know,
but I do think that's an interesting thought experiment, right? Because then there's the why behind it, right? Like what's driving that thought? Why would you pick that? But again, if I was choosing for my son, oh, Superman, like no question. Even if that means I have to die so that he can actually go be Superman, I'm like, hell yeah, brother.
mm.
Green rises to the top. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting
I
thing.
I feel like we should assure the listeners that we are going to do the Epistle of Barnabas.
Well, I
Why would
mean,
that be a thing to assure them of?
are there people like knocking down the door like you were supposed to do Barnabas?
Because we
You
said we were going to do
didn't.
that last week, and
Oh, I
I'm
mean,
sure
we're,
there
we're
are
not
there.
liars,
Superman happened.
right?
Yeah, I'm sure there are people who came back this week just to like, okay, they're going to talk about Superman, then they're going to do what they said. We are going to do what we said.
I would love for somebody who came here to hear about Barnabas say so in the comments. And
Me
not
too.
not not just to say Brian's right or wrong, just like, was there really somebody that was like upset that we didn't do Barnabas? Of course, if you were, you might not have stayed for this whole show.
Is
So,
there somebody who knows what Barnabas is
right, that'd be interesting
other
Well,
too.
they
than
might have listened to our conversation last week and
uh,
got invested in it.
Or maybe they went and
And
read it.
we
Did anybody go read Barnabas over the last week with an expectation that we were going to cover it today? And now you're really upset because you're
and
like,
you're
I read,
sitting cross-legged on the floor watching us on YouTube with notes out. Like I
and you're
read
all
that.
you've got your picture pages and your magic pen that makes the noises when you
Right.
draw lines, and now there's nothing to do because we didn't talk
Some
about
for
Barnabas.
some reason I kind of see that's the Bundy household right now. I think James is sitting on the floor. He's got his daughters there. His wife is cooking up dinner, and they like what Superman? What? That's what I think.
uh,
Yeah, let us
well,
know if there's anybody out there that was that let down by us swapping our topic. Let us know. But it's not like we tricked you in the subject line, so you knew what you were getting into when you clicked on it, or did you?
True.
Maybe I'll put Barnabas in the subject line.
Put a Barnabas
I do think
a
we should.
thumbnail.
I
What did
do
Barnabas
think
look
we
like
should.
anyway?
I do think we should include that like in the description. Like, hey, we know you came here for the Epistle of Barnabas. Come back next week.
Too bad you're getting Superman.
Superman and the other heroes. What?
Superman was a Nephilim.
Oh,
Kinda. Yeah.
Ki kind of.
And
Yeah.
I mean,
He was no Christ allegory. He was a man of renown.
well,
Get out of here.
the
Here comes
Nephilim,
here.
except the Nephilim are a dark reflection of the incarnation.
Mm. You, you didn't see that coming, did you, Matt?
No,
I don't know why, like I've said this a million times, like
a million
the
times.
a million times.
A million, 1 million
Like
times.
in Genesis 6, the world is corrupted by the illicit mingling of divine and human natures. In the New Testament, humanity is saved by the holy mingling of divine and human natures.
You said that like 3 times.
Okay, but I've said it.
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean,
I
he
accept
said
your
it enough. I
apology.
don't know why you haven't taken it to heart yet.
I
Like, I don't know.
accept your apology, Matt.
I'm glad you do. I was sweating it. It was touch and go.
So, I mean, can we ask Mike, did we solve Superman? That's Matt's dad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
I
I was
see.
I don't,
just
I don't, I don't, I don't think we solved anything, but I thought it was an
You're
interesting
done.
conversation. Um,
Okay.
like,
um
yeah, I don't even think I have any final thoughts.
Elon, if you're listening, if you buy DC Comics and put me in charge, I will make a infinitely better Superman movie than any you've seen before.
You should probably tell him on X.
No, he listens to the show.
I mean, it did look cool. I think it's worth a watch
I'll probably grab
if
it this week.
like if anybody out there, look, if you're just a movie fan of DC, the movie's good. If you have expectations of what a Superman character should be, they miss the mark for certain.
A
Um,
Superman movie is definitely a cultural event that I would recommend everybody watching, but I hated it, and I think it's
I didn't hate it.
I truly hated it. I don't have words for how much I hated it.
And I think I
And
didn't
Brian
hate
be
it.
wordy as hell.
Yeah,
So if
right.
he doesn't have
So,
enough words, that's saying
he might
something.
have said some real hate right there.
I
That's
hate
some
it. So
vitriol.
I'm mad at James Gunn. I think he's a bad person.
Brian's like, he's going like full on Cartman. He's like, I hate you so much.
But I will say that the hype around the movie being woke is overblown.
Good. That's at
Yeah,
least something.
if you
Way
watch it,
overblown.
if you come looking for it, yeah, okay.
Sure. Like, but that's artists. Artists are
That's Hollywood in
whatever.
general, right?
Sure.
Like you could
I
pull
mean,
anything.
they do some race swaps. Don't care. Perry White's black. Spoiler alert.
But
Whatever.
he was black in the last one too.
Was he? Okay.
Yeah, Lawrence Fishburne played him.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Um, Otis is black.
But they didn't make Jimmy Olsen black, and I'm sick and tired of all the ginger erasure, and they didn't do it here, and I appreciate that much.
Actually, I like that might be the best character with a comic book flavor in the whole movie.
Except he was too old in this. Jimmy Olsen's supposed to
Whatever.
be like a young kid. He's like
Maybe, but I agreed with Jimmy Olsen with the James Gunn Olsen. That a boy, James.
You
I'm
did
trying to
something
think.
right for all the money you spent.
And Lois just wasn't enough.
Was
Like the
she
argument.
was she in clunky shoes throughout the whole movie?
No.
Oh, okay.
And she was in those clunky shoes for a decent reason.
Okay.
She wasn't. I mean, she's still an office siren.
Okay.
I think the dark hair and blue eyes was cool though. Like they finally made her look.
Yeah, she's at least cast to type. Like she's
Yeah.
like looks like Lois. Um,
And there's a little dynamic there where they have a pretty good conversation that kind of sets the movie off, but
Okay.
she just
yeah.
didn't matter enough.
Well,
She was as vapid as as the plot to plot points.
I did appreciate that she's a strong character. She's a like you could get why like Superman digs her, but they didn't make her this like super confident like this uber competent girl boss. Like when she's
Right,
flying
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
the Mr. Terrific thing,
Yeah.
like she does like she almost crashes it.
Right.
And
And yeah, she's
it's a little jokey at her expense, but not too bad. Like it's not like he didn't if it was any other modern movie, she would have been able to fly it better than Mr. Terrific and could have fixed it better than he could and would have been able to hot wire it and save the whole day herself. But in this,
Okay. I think you're going too far.
and she had some journalistic integrity, so that was kind of cool
Well,
too.
that's fake.
I did really, really hate what they did with like Clark's journalism with regard to Superman.
Agreed.
Okay. Well, let's shut
The-
this down because you guys are going to keep on until you go too far. We did the whole show. We didn't spoil it.
don't you judge me.
Let's not spoil it now.
All right.
It's pretty early in the movie and it doesn't spoil anything.
Here we go.
This is how it starts.
So
or ends.
we already gave our final thoughts. We're all good.
I'm all set.
Yeah, I'm good.
All right, everybody. Thank you. Subscribe. Leave a comment. Leave multiple comments. Tell your mama and them. And go ahead and stay enlightened, stay curious, and we will see you next week with the Epistle of Barnabas.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Right? Epistle of
Maybe.
Barnabas.
We'll see.
We're out.